I'd say so.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and people know it, but sometimes there are events that the corporate media covers more or less. This one you felt it was sufficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was interesting how that it was kind of a phenomenon, really, the way that action kind of just materialized spontaneously, and how the media was there from the very beginning. There was video footage of me climbing up the building, just free climbed up, and I think because I was right in downtown, and there was immediate support. There were people there on the ground doing ground support for me around the clock for those 11 days. I was never left alone. And I think because I was right in plain view, in public, and right downtown Portland, people going to work, going out on the weekend, coming back from work, I was right there pretty much in their face. And so for some reason, the mainstream media really kind of seized a grip on that action, and it received amazing coverage in all forms. I borrowed a cell phone and was doing interviews on the ledge, all across the country on the radio and stuff. So, and I would say that action was definitely a very pivotal factor in getting that sale canceled. We ended up, being successful in getting Eagle Creek, the whole sale saved. Yes.
And the payback that you had was everything after that. I'm saying the payback that you had, because we know the circumstances to which you will get to, but it shows. I'm saying in obvious things, but it shows the type of personal sacrifices is required for something to happen.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do things that are a little crazy in order to get people's attention and kind of wake people up.
Oh, I venture to say that many, not only people who watch our program, but people at large share of your feelings. And I do not know whether our viewers feel otherwise. And hopefully we'll put the telephone number up if somebody wants to call. But I would imagine that the greatest majority of people who are, the moment they become aware of what we call, with a comprehensive word, the environment, they cannot but help feeling that some action has to be taken in order to safeguard what is essentially a way of life, the way of nature, so to speak. And even going to the coast or in some coastal area, when you see these patches of trees completely, with the mountain naked, and you know what happens when there is no longer a tree, it's a saddening view. But apart from the view itself, as you mentioned yourself, there's a question of the water, there's a question of the wildlife, and all the other, the air. And every day we read in the newspaper that they're cutting the equatorial forest, which of course we cannot do anything about it, which are the major absorbers of CO2. And so it's a closed loop. It's a negative closed loop with which we're all trying somehow to become heard. So, but the bottom line is, I think that the majority, I would venture to say the majority of the population will probably agree with you, with us, but with you as a symbol of that, 100%. But I interrupted you. So after this venture, that was successful, what was the next thing how did your activity develop that led us again to the fact you just came back here? So you're just out recently, right?
From prison. Yes.
From prison.
Well, I ran for the Green Party on the. I ran for Congress on the Green Party ticket in fall of 2000, same year that Bush stole the election, and received more than 15,000 votes from local residents in the Multnomah County district, and so that was an interesting experience to be able to I really took the campaign seriously and printed all my flyers on scrap paper and went around door to door and talking to people and hearing what their concerns were and letting them know that I really was someone that was concerned about taking the corporate and corrupt elements out of government. And it allowed me a platform in a kind of an arena to speak to a lot of people, a whole kinds of different settings that I wouldn't have otherwise. So all the while still kind of advocating my environmental message and being stewards of the land. And I think I think it had an impact, even though I didn't win the election. I definitely have no regrets.
And when you went door to door, what was I was making an assumption before, and a few years gone by. But what was the reaction to someone presenting himself as a candidate, standing for nature, standing for the environment? What was the reaction that you got?
Well, I think some people were appreciative that I took the time to go door to door and meet and greet people, even if they didn't necessarily agree with all of my politics, that they appreciated people coming out into the neighborhood and reaching out. And certainly there were a lot of people that were very concerned about the environment and really thought that it was very important that we have you know, stronger oversight and stronger accountability, certainly for government and corporate entities.
I remember that in one of the past shows, another guest here who subscribes to the same views was making the point that actually the Forest Service, there is no, it's not a profitable venture cutting the trees. So it doesn't, so if even the profit motive seems to be assuming that the profit is for the public good in this case, because it's a public property, even this is not there. So anyway, I interrupt you. So go ahead. So after you run for the Green Party,
and then you mentioned the coast and how egregious it is taking a trip to the coast and seeing the myriad of clear cuts. It really is very disturbing. And I became involved in a group with a group on the coast to help save some forests out there what's known as God's Valley. And you know, you were mentioning earlier about, you know, ideally or theoretically, people are not supposed to cut trees where there are activists, where there are people living in them or near them. Yet the experience in God's Valley was that I free climbed up a tree to help support the tree sit that was nearby. And they located me and ordered me down, and I said, I'll come down when the sale's canceled. And they proceeded to cut all the trees out from around me. And then because I was hopping through the canopy from tree to tree, and then they cut all the trees out from around me to keep me isolated, and then they cut all the limbs out from under me, and I was at least 60 feet up. And there were times where I was closer to 80 and 90 feet up when I was at the very top of the tree, and left me no way down, and then engaged in sleep deprivation tactics for 2 nights, where they slammed things into the trunk. They had bullhorns and sirens that they would sound off periodically to keep me awake.
And this would be the cutters or the Forest Service, or both?
Both. It was mostly the sheriffs, ironically, because this was on state land now. So ODF, the Oregon Department of Forestry, was overseeing these operations. Forest Service is only on national forest, and so it's very interesting how our tax dollars once again go to support sheriffs that are then terrorizing activists. And so it was a combination of loggers, ODF officials, and Clatsop and Tillamook County sheriffs. And after 48 hours of no sleep and very little food and water and intense harassment, I eventually passed out and fell almost to my death. I mean, by all accounts, I should have died that night. It was probably close to a 100-foot fall. And I suffered many, many internal injuries. I had a concussion. I had a collapsed lung because one of my ribs was severed and pierced my lung. I had a fractured pelvis in 2 places. I was, you know, so I was very fortunate that I didn't die. And I eat very healthfully and I live very consciously, so I was able to walk out of the hospital not too long after that. That was a very intense experience. And then
and they assumed that this did not have legal implication.
Well, you know, you would think that they would. A lot of people were talking about, you know, looking at who the real terrorist is, you know, because they were flying that word around a lot right after September 11th, because this is '01. This is October of '01, just a month after, and so. You know, and then there were people that suggested, Trey, you know, you could have a civil suit against them. You know, they tried to kill you. They almost killed you. Yet when I talked to some lawyers, they really didn't seem like they thought it was going to be hard to win the case. So I didn't ever pursue it civilly, even though I very much wanted to. If the lawyers weren't really gung-ho about it, there's not much I could do.
Of course, of course.
So less than a year later, I was on the run. I was indicted for 2 separate arsons, one that was at Ross Island Sand and Gravel, and another one that was at Chopert Logging out near Estacada. Chopert Logging was the contractor to go and kill the trees at Eagle Creek. So they had a direct connection to the sale at Eagle Creek, and I thought it would be a good time to see Canada. So
of course,
I had no intention of turning myself in and